Joe, Joe's been Joe. Yeah, he needs a job. If you know of it, if you know of anything good, I mean, he's not above anything, are you, Joe?
I stopped at Walmart one time. I'm not
Okay. So much for his stocking feet. Uh, he's been attending Sierra Vista since September. He's an acclaimed speaker, author, and historian, and even some of what he says is actually true, I think. No, but he researches and does some really good instructive stuff as well, but that's not why he's here today. I think he's going to be funny. He's produced regular columns for several newspapers as well as blogs. So, ladies and germs, Mr. Joe Weaver.
Thank you, sir. Well, that's fine. Apparently the word got out that I was a motivational speaker, so if you want to be motivated, you better go home and get out your Bibles, because that's not what I came for today. What's that?
I said, we're sorry that we don't have as many this morning anymore than what we have this morning.
Well, the neat thing about it is we've got the quality this time.
Oh, well, that's
Yes, ma'am. You betcha. Now, when you have a quirky sense of humor, it takes a while for people to figure out you're joking, a lot of times. Matter of fact, I got a message the other day from a friend of mine in Pampa. We moved here. We're from the Panhandle. Both my wife and I grew up in the Panhandle. We've lived all around Amarillo without actually being in Amarillo. We moved here from Pampa. And a friend of mine that's a banker that has sort of a quirky sense of humor, his wife wrote me the other day, and she said, "We sure miss you." She said, "Jerry said something the other day, and the other people didn't smile," and she thought, "Good Lord, they're taking him serious. They think he's serious." So, and I do have some weird thoughts, like the hip replacement thing. My wife had a hip replacement a couple years ago, and she was in agony, as you talk about. Well, I didn't realize. We've been married 37 years in June. I thought we had a good relationship. I mean, I can't imagine life without her. But somebody asked her how her hip replacement worked out, and she said, "It's the best thing that ever happened to me."
well, anyway.
Yeah. I said, "Well, I'm not going to ask how I rank then. If I'm not number one, I'm really don't care to see the listing." But I did tell her, I said, I'm going to remember you said that. I'm going to tell our kids, I'm going to tell your mother, and I'm going to tell God that your hip replacement was the best thing that ever happened to you. I also find it a little odd that you're taking chairs with you to a furniture place. I mean, don't they have them? You don't want to sit in those. Yeah.
An old lady like me has to sit down.
Well, I understand why you'd have to have chairs, but it just struck me as odd, a furniture place. And I've got to tell you, Gary said we've been going here since September. We're kind of late. We're actually, both my wife and I are recovering Baptist. And, if you ever truly recover, kind of like some other things I guess you never really recover from. But, and so with that, there are certain terms that come up in other churches that we are not familiar with. One of those terms being narthex. Someone will tell me it's in the narthex. Every time I hear the word narthex, in the back of my mind, I hear, "Is narthex right for you? Ask your doctor to make sure." Side effects may cause drowsiness during long periods of seating. So that's just the way my warped little mind works. And if that didn't convince you, I think this first story will. The blade was razor sharp. It required little effort to plunge it deep into the heart of the object of my affections, who for this story will be known as Sweet Thing. As I watched the sticky red fluid leak from Sweet Thing's heart onto the concrete below, I had known this day was coming, but I had not known it would be this day. You see, this day started like it seemed like millions of others when I was growing up, with me on the seat of an open Minneapolis Moline tractor, pulling a rusty one-way plow across a dusty West Texas field. it seemed like that had just gone on forever. And the only way I could handle that is by just singing those old heartbreaking, tears in my beer Hank Williams songs. If you loved me half as much as I love you, you wouldn't worry me half as much as you do. I was 16, old enough to know what I wanted and what I didn't. What I didn't want was to be sitting on a Minneapolis Moline tractor pulling a rusty one-way plow across a dusty West Texas field. What I wanted was back there, back at the big house. Back at the big house, thank you. What any red-blooded West Texas boy would want. Take these chains from my heart and set me free. But being a conscientious farm worker and knowing that farm equipment can break at any time, I conscientiously kept a watch on that plow, looking back at least once every morning and once in the afternoon. I don't know if it was a sudden pang of conscientiousness or perhaps a premonition of something more sinister to cause me to look back a second time that afternoon. And out over the field, I saw a plume of dust rising. At the tip of that plume of dust was a Ford pickup, and I knew that driving that Ford pickup was the boss. I could not imagine what he wanted because we never interrupted work, except for something more serious, and in the boss's mind, few things were more serious than work. Well, I depressed the clutch, took the tractor out of gear and decreased the throttle and let the engine idle as I finished my song. Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart? Just as the pickup pulled alongside, since the engine was idling, I just looked at the boss and asked with my eyes, "What's up?" He made a gesture I'd seen him make thousands of times that I thought meant simply, kill the engine. I killed the engine. When the sound faded away, he said, "Get in." I got in. I said, "What's up?" He didn't answer. We headed towards the house. We pulled up in the driveway of the big house. There they were. Dot, the boss's wife, who had always demonstrated her affection for me, much to my embarrassment. She had told me she was excited about me the first time she laid eyes on me, and by now she would even kiss me openly. And there was Sweet Thing. They were a study in contrast, I guess, because as I said, Dot made no secret of her affection for me, while Sweet Thing, like the girl in Hank's song, had a cold heart. Dot was older, thin. Sweet Thing was young, rounded in all the right places, firm. Remember that old song? So firm, so round, so firm, so fully packed. Yeah. I didn't remember what that was. Okay, yeah, Lucky Strike. Okay. Well, I knew Sweet Thing, like the girl in Hank's song, had a cold heart and could never know my desire and would never return my affection. Dot, knowing my passion, pulled forth from her apron a butcher knife, the same butcher knife I had seen her use on beef livers and chicken breasts and artichoke hearts. She drew it forth, and before anything could be said, she plunged it deep into the heart of Sweet Thing. There was no sound, no cry of alarm, just a soft crunch and a muffled squeal. The hogs and the chickens would take care of the evidence. But first, I would get what I wanted. As I reached down my hand, I'd got a piece of Sweet Thing's heart. And as I touched that to my lips, I realized that Mama had cut the sweetest watermelon I'd ever had. Made sweeter mainly because for once in my life, never before, never since, had Daddy ever stopped work just so we could have a watermelon. I like to do limericks. This one actually has a basis in San Angelo. I don't know if any of you people know Peggy and Merton Skaggs or Angela Skaggs. Angela's a good friend of mine. When I was a librarian, we got to be good friends, and I remember she called me one time and told, this is my weird sense of humor, told me about a friend of hers who had passed away. Her husband had passed away, and said they found him dead in his bedroom with a remote control in his hand. I said, in the heart of every man is a maxim on which he will stand. It is this, and I quote, you can have the remote when you pry it from my cold and dead hand. By the way, Cindy said her mother did not come because she didn't want to be motivated. I do some motivational speaking. If you're motivated today, it's not my fault. You may be motivated to leave or take a nap or visit or something else, but if you're motivated to be a better person, I promise it's not from anything I did. Anyway, okay, tiger. There it was in black and white. Tiger. I was a tiger in any woman's eyes. You see, I had just completed a personality quiz in one of those popular magazines like Popular Mechanics or Popular Photography about how attractive are you to the opposite sex. And my score said you are a tiger in any woman's eyes. Never mind that I was fat, clumsy, pimple-faced, and 15 years old. That was science. I was a tiger in any woman's eyes. But you know, I didn't care about any woman. I only cared about one. Well, actually, she wasn't a woman. She was a 15-year-old girl. She sat across from me in algebra. Ellie was her name. Elaine Roberts went by Ellie. Oh, I was smitten with Ellie. But I was incredibly shy. I could hardly speak to anybody at all, much less beautiful girls. Oh, but I courted her. I courted Ellie. We had beautiful summer picnics with her in a white dress like Mary Poppins. In the fall, we would go for walks in the woods with the beautiful leaves falling all around us. Okay, it's the Texas Panhandle, right? But I mean, as long as you're dreaming, why not? Winter would come and there would be sleigh rides with us bundled under a warm buffalo robe. And in the springtime, I would just gaze on her face and compare nature's puny attempts at beauty. Oh, I was a hopeless romantic. Actually, I still am. I just don't let it out much anymore. But I thought, here this is. It says I'm a tiger in any woman's eyes. What do I do with that information? Do I show it to her? Do I cut the test out of the deal and show it to her? Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even talk to her. But I had my dreams. And as things go for 15-year-old boys, other girls drifting in and out of those dreams. And eventually I found a way to talk to some. And during a weak moment, one of them actually even acquiesced to marrying me. And over a number of years, we had a very wonderful relationship, still do. And I pretty much totally forgot about Ellie, this little junior high crush I'd had. Got active in other things. One of the things I got active in was community theater. Well, that's probably putting too fine a point on it. I had acted in a few melodramas. And this friend that had put on the melodramas had asked me to do a program with her for a Breakfast with Santa event. And we were going to play, she was going to play a doll, another character was going to play a doll, and I was to play a teddy bear. Well, yeah, that'll be fun. And I like doing stuff for kids, so we'll do that. Now, a bear costume for a 6-foot man is a little hard to come by. But that morning, there I was with my fuzzy ears and my my nose blackened, and we did the program. Did a great job. It was a lot of fun. The kids really enjoyed it, and they really enjoyed it afterwards when we got out among the crowd. When we got out among the crowd and got to meet the kids. Well, this old man came up to me. He's probably the age I am now, but at the time, he's anyway, this older gentleman came up to me and he said, "My daughter thinks she went to school with you." I said, "Well, possibly. What's her name?" He said, "Well, her name was Elaine Roberts." Elaine Roberts. Oh, Ellie! And man, it all comes rushing back. Every bit of it. I'm 15 years old again with a newspaper article in my hand. And I'm thinking, okay, this is silly here. I mean, life has been great. I'm not sorry the way things have worked out by any means, but this is my really first crush. And I asked him, I said, "Oh, really? Yeah, that's right, we did. Where is she?" He said, "Oh, she lives about 30 miles away. She's here today with her kids." Here today. I can see her. Oh, I've seen some of my classmates. I may not want to see her. Had the years been kind? Well, he said, "Here she comes." Oh, man, had the years been kind. She had aged, but she had done a lot better than some of my classmates, I'll guarantee you. And so we visited, and I could not get over the surreality of this moment that here we are visiting, and I have never spoken to this woman before in my life, being too shy when I was in school. "What do you talk about?" "Well, you're living here, I'm living there, and we got kids, But all of a sudden I thought, I've got to know. Was I a tiger in her eyes back then? And so I asked her, I said, "Ellie, I've just got to ask you." And I kind of told her a little bit of this story. And I said, "Was I a tiger in your eyes? Did you see me as a tiger?" And immediately my eyes blurred with just blatant stupidity. Why? 35 years later would I ask such a stupid question, the point of the answer being absolutely nothing except more embarrassment? And when my eyes began to clear, the expression on her face was peculiar. Her lips were pursed. Her eyes were a little squinched up. And she ducked her head for a little bit. When she raised up, her eyes were clear. Her mouth seemed to be in control, and she laid her hand on my arm. Oh, she's touched me. She laid her hand on my arm, and she said, "Joe, you're a nice guy. Honestly, I never saw you as a tiger. But if it's any consolation, I've seen you as a teddy bear." You may not surmise at first glance. No, excuse me. Started that wrong. It won't come to me, I felt. But this is the hand I've been dealt. With an advancing gut and retreating butt, my pants won't stay up with a belt. You may not surmise at first glance, I really enjoy a good dance. I had to surrender to wearing suspenders, or I'll two-step right out of my pants. I'll end with this one. A few years ago, my family and I went on a little trip. Actually, my daughter, I have two daughters. One lives in California. She graduated high school in the year 2000. My younger daughter, Ann, and one of the reasons we moved to San Angelo to be closer to her in Austin, is graduated in 2002. They were 2 years apart, obviously. And so when my daughter, Betsy, graduated in 2000, she wanted to go to college on the West Coast. So we were going to take her out there to the West Coast. Loaded up our truck and moved to Beverly, I guess, unless you want to say something, Hills, that is. Anyway, we loaded up our van, and as we headed out, now we were living in the Texas Panhandle. If you've ever been in that area, and this is obviously, if you know how to go from the Texas Panhandle to California, you know the way to go is I-40. You also know that before I-40 there was Route 66. And you also know that the Mother Road had a song written about her by Bobby Bonds that was recorded by everybody from Frank Sinatra to Bishop Sis, I guess. I don't know. It seems like everybody's recorded that. Anyway, and you know that main line in that song, and I know you guys can sing it with me, get your kicks on Route 66. Come on, let's do that again. Get your kicks on Route 66. That's right. You'll think of that. That will be going through your mind the rest of the day. You may not remember your mother's name, your own name, but you'll be saying, get your kicks on Route 66. Well, actually, from the way we went, we go from Dumas down to where I-40 is, and there's a small town of Vega, which actually has the distinction of being the midpoint on Route 66. It's the only thing to recommend Vega to anybody. I'll guarantee you, there's nothing. It's just a small town, very small. It is the county seat for that county, but it's a low population county. Anyway, the access road onto I-40 is actually Route 66. So you see these brown historic signs all over, historic Route 66. Well, you've had an inkling this morning of how my mind works. What you haven't seen is how it works with music. I have a tendency to sing out loud a lot when I don't even realize I'm doing it. As a matter of fact, I was a librarian I was library director in Dumas for 10 years, and I had not realized, I wasn't even realize I was doing it, but I was in my office and I was singing, what's a guy got to do to get a girl in this town? One of my friends out there at the counter said, maybe if you wouldn't sing. So that gives you a little insight into my personality. I'll just break into song. Well, every time I saw a sign that said Route 66, now I only knew 2 phrases from that song. One of them being, get your kicks on Route 66. So every time I saw that sign, I would sing that, get your kicks on Route 66. I didn't even realize I was doing it. But after a while, you'll be hearing the groaning. You could almost hear their eyes roll. Every time I would do that. Well, we were driving along, I thought, okay, I've got to break this up a little bit. Hey, kids, see those trees over there? You know what you find under those trees? No, what? You can get your sticks on Route 66. They just kind of groaned. I couldn't understand that. But and then I said, if you cut those trees into firewood, you can get your ricks on Route 66. Well, I was on a roll by this time. So we kept driving down. I said, San Jone's coming up here. At San Jone, there's a big truck stop. I've heard truckers say that you can pick up a pavement princess or 2. Yeah, you can get your chicks on Route 66. If you want to rent a movie, you can get your flicks on Route 66. You know, if this had been the day when you could have earbuds, I'm sure they would have been in long before, but this was way before those days. So we continued to drive along. Up here in Moriarty, did you know that Moriarty was settled by an Irishman bringing hillbillies from Arkansas? Yes, you can get mixed hicks on Route 66. And up here in Albuquerque, there's a place where you can get vapor rub, lollipops, and something else. What is that? Darn it. Oh, yeah, candles. You can get licks, wicks, and vicks on Route 66. We traveled on. We got closer to the edge of New Mexico. Darn, what's the name of that town? Gallup, thank you, yes, it was in Gallup, and we were listening to the local radio, and the news came on that they said they would not use inmates to repair their adobe structures. I said, a nix to fix of bricks by convicts on Route 66. Then we crossed into Arizona, and we began to see signs for another town, Winslow. That prompted another song, of which I only knew one phrase. Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona, such a fine sight to see. Well, fortunately, it wasn't too far to Winslow, and we got through that, headed out to Flagstaff, and we began to see the Route 66 signs again. You know, we can hobnob with the elite in Flagstaff. We can mix with the cliques on Route 66. Well, we made it through Flagstaff, and then we began to see signs that reminded me of the only other phrase I knew in that song. Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. Now, I don't know if you know how far it is between just west of Flagstaff up through San Bernardino, but it's a long way. And I sang that every time I saw a sign for Kingman, Barstow, or San Bernardino. Well, we finally got out to the West Coast, stayed with my mother-in-law, got my daughter enrolled in college, and the three of us were coming back. Of course, my younger daughter could drive. She was 16 and had just gotten her permit. And so we had 3 drivers, which was nice. But the other 2 warned me, we don't want to hear anything about Winslow, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino, and if you say anything at all about you know what, you will pay the consequences. I had been warned. But you know, when you've got a truly creative, artistic mind, you can't just bottle that up. And I was sitting in the back seat. My wife was seated in the front. My daughter was driving, and I had picked up a little receipt that was on the floor and a pencil, and I began to scratch something out. And somewhere between Santa Rosa and Tucumcari, I yelled out, I've got it! I've got it! My wife and daughter looked at each other, and then, up in the mirror, kind of looked back at me, and they said, what? I said, what? If you had movies and snapshots of fights between groups of Irish hillbillies, girlfriends with shillelaghs, and nervous conmen and inmates with cinder blocks, it would be flicks and pics of convicts flicks and pics of conflicts twixt cliques of mixed hicks chicks with sticks and slicks and convicts with ticks and bricks getting their kicks on Route 66. My daughter slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the edge. You hear the gravel sliding, and when we got out, there was almost a smoke haze. She had put the brakes on so far. And she jumped out, and she jerked open my door. She said, get out. I said, you're not leaving me out here in this desert. And she said, I'm not leaving you, but get out. I looked at my wife, and she gives me one of those looks like, you better do it. So I got out of the car. If you had been driving that stretch of the Mother Road that hot summer afternoon, you would have seen me getting my kicks on Route 66. Thank you very much, folks. It's been wonderful. You've been a lot of fun.
She had a sense of humor too.
Do what?
She had a
Oh, well, when she was a baby, I dropped her on her head. And it terrified me. I make jokes of it, but it really did terrify me. And she said, and she tells people that, and her friends say, that explains so much. They said, no, you need to meet my dad. That explains a lot.
Then you'll understand.
That's right.
I'm glad my wife wasn't here. Our humor is too close to. She would. Oh yeah. Be
victims of this at some time. When we get that prayer list in the morning, if it's one of those times when I just don't know what Stephen's talking about. No, I hate to say that. But if it's a slow time, I'll often get that list, and I will combine names to make businesses. Like, you may have somebody, Joe Buck and Lanny Bird is Buck and Bird Outfitters or something like that. I've had some real strange ones. Yeah, I'll have to share. I'll need to get some of those worked up and share some of those with you because I can't remember what they are.
As a choir member, I was wondering. I know you're a performer. I just wondered if you sang. I was gonna, see if you might get in there.
Just Hank Williams.
But now that
now you are. You see why I go for entertainment, don't you? Fanny Crosby.
Oh, thank you, Joe. That was great. Let's give him a hand, folks.
Thanks.